Hello folks, today is July 19th, 2013. Welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. Today I will continue on a theme that I have discussed before, but perhaps get a bit more cautionary. And that is the so-called disclosure movement. This is a pretty widespread internet phenomenon which involves a number of different figures who all claim that somehow the U.S. government, perhaps other governments, are hiding secret technology, secret information about extraterrestrials, and that if only they would reveal this information, the world would be a better place. We would no longer have to rely upon fossil fuels, but that for its own reasons, the U.S. government, in order to sustain the petroleum industry, has been keeping this whole UFO issue a secret. Well, I have reflected before on the reasons why I think that governments do not wish to talk about it, and I have elaborated upon it in my book, The Great Blunder. I'm not going to go over that again today. What I will do is talk about some of the very serious problems that exist in some quarters, especially of this so-called disclosure movement. I'm going to try to avoid mentioning names. I may end up doing so, but I will do my best not to. There is one particular individual whom I have recently had contact with. I have been a subscriber to his internet radio show. He is a proponent, one of the relatively popular ones on the internet, of the whole business of disclosure. I decided to subscribe to his program simply because I'm interested in studying the disclosure movement, and I find it to be an absolutely fascinating issue as a sociologist of religion. And I seem to go from issue to issue over the years, but my focus always seems to return to these different new religious movements. He does a number of things which are, in my view, extraordinarily unethical. I'll give you an example. The main product that he sells on his internet radio show, really podcast, is something called MMS. MMS stands for Miracle Mineral Supplement. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has warned people not to purchase or to consume, I should say, MMS. What they have said is that MMS is basically industrial strength bleach, and that consuming it over an extended period of time can be extremely harmful. This individual, however, sells it and promotes it. In fact, the line he uses is something like, "You never know when you will need it." While I was on his forum, he also made a posting linking to a very obscure, I would say disreputable, website, which I won't mention, which had an article on it that claimed that a person could receive superpowers by staring into the sun at sunrise and sunset. Furthermore, the article alleged that NASA itself has confirmed this. Now, anything like that is going to immediately attract somebody in the disclosure movement, since they think that the government has all these supposed secrets. And so if NASA is disclosing something like that, well, this is something I need to pay attention to. That is obviously an extremely dangerous thing to do, to stare into the sun. The very idea that a person would get superpowers by staring at the sun is silly on its face, but just the idea of doing it, something as dangerous as that, is despicable, that this guy would be promoting this activity. There was also a discussion in this Fellows Forum while I was there, which began with this woman talking about somebody who was a victim of ritual sexual abuse. If you are familiar with the literature in that field, you know that that area has been very, very thoroughly studied and vetted by a lot of scholars, and that there has emerged no evidence whatsoever for this phenomenon of ritual abuse. A number of people decades ago stepped forward claiming that they were victims of ritual abusers. The perpetrators, I should say alleged perpetrators, many of them were sent to prison. After it was made clear that these events never happened, or at least there was no evidence that it happened, many of the people in prison were released. And later on, the hypnotists, the people who had hypnotized these supposed victims of ritual abuse, many of them were sued. So, when this person mentioned that this individual was a victim of ritual abuse, not someone on the forum, but someone somewhere else, I suppose, I made the same point as I just did. And I got viciously attacked. My comment was, well, if this person has abused anybody, certainly he should be sent away to prison and the key should be thrown away. But ritual abuse itself has not been supported in the literature. Well, immediately that's when the attacks on me began, and they continued until I was ultimately, a couple of months later, thrown off the forum. I was accused of being insensitive, of being somebody who sympathized with this person who did this alleged ritual abuse. The owner of the site, also the host of this podcast, came back at me with reference to a case of abuse, of child sexual abuse. And my response was, well, yeah, child sexual abuse and is a rampant problem all over the world, especially in places like Thailand and the Ukraine, but it's also a problem here in the United States. And obviously, those kinds of things need to be dealt with. But the example that you gave is simply an example of that, of child sexual abuse. There's no allegation that was ever made by the alleged victims that there was anything like ritual abuse. And at that point, I think he realized that he was dealing with somebody who was not going to be easily duped. So essentially what you have on that forum is a guy, a hoaxer, who spreads around this misinformation, who has convinced a lot of people that there is this big secrecy because of protecting proprietary technological interests on UFO technology, and that he has all of this secret information, or at least he's able to get it, whether through his own reading or by interviewing various guests. That's the problem. So whenever I think of the disclosure movement, immediately I think of something which is dangerous. Whenever you have people that claim that they are looking for something to be disclosed, that somehow people are keeping secrets from them, immediately they are setting themselves up to be tricked and duped. And that is precisely what goes on this forum. Now, I've seen it to other degrees in other places over my years as a sociologist of religion, but to be honest, I have never seen it to the same degree as I have in the disclosure movement. So my caution is against getting involved with that at all, or if you are involved with it, to be extraordinarily skeptical of anything that anybody involved, especially a leader of that movement, says, whether it's about disclosure, whether it's about exopolitics, supposed political relationships with other species in the universe, whether it's about finding ways to intentionally, psychically contact extraterrestrial species, no matter. Anything even remotely connected with the disclosure movement, or anybody who is a leading figure in it, stay as far away from it as you can. That is my suggestion. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.